Good evening, folks, and welcome to another session from the Old Wise Asylum. I can't get comfy on this chair, I think it's on its day. So, how are you? Interesting week for me. I don't know what you lot have been up to, but wow, what a mad week for learning shit, honestly. So, I've had a good one. Still trying to compute a lot of the stuff that I've been reckoning with, so that's interesting. And so I've not paid attention to what's gone on anywhere else, apart from those 15-minute city jobs. Have you seen the state of that? They're sticking gardening boxes all over the shop. Now that's obstruction. You're within your right to move it on the highway. Now that's another interesting. So obviously I've paid attention a bit because I found a video. A guy, I can't remember his name, put it on the face ache. So this guy has really sort of simplified the difference between England, English realm, and the actual constitutional law. And I thought it was quite spiffy. Because I've papped on forever and ever and said, you know, if you want to study a sort of raft of law that gives you rights and freedoms to say in, then you're looking at the English Constitution, which they call the Bill of Rights, Coronation Oath, those aspects of law. But you've got to remember, they're parliamentary law. It's acts of Parliament. So that's not the Constitution when we're looking for it. And I have said, you know, if you do that, you're on person. You are a citizen. And away you go. It's there. If you were to study that, you'd be secure in that sort of realm. Now, if we're looking for common custom, then we're looking at the right to the highway, which is one of the oldest I've found, Molyneux time laws, back to the BCs. So, right to the highway, that was written in the BC. So, way before Rome, etc. And of course, these guys claimed of Trojan origin, and they were in Cornwallis. And if you go with the lore, he had two sons, Belinus and Brennius. We have a Belinus line runs through the centre of England and Wales. I think it touches Wales. Right through. So where I am, 5 mile away in Whalley, that's the centre point. So they have Whalley Abbey. Good history going on there, and that's the central point of the Belinus line. So these names are not, you know, pie in the sky. So I did a bit of a study years ago and found that Molyneux died, the two brothers fell out, like you do, and obviously Belinus was the star, Brennius was the jealous bad boy that weren't happy with his lot. He didn't like having an older brother. Anyway, they went to war. Between them, they basically took over the entire British Isles. Brennius had to flee over into Gaul. He took over the entire landmass of Gaul. And then he attacked Rome and sacked it. And this is, what, 300 odd BC? So, Republic's only been going like 300 odd years, and all of a sudden in comes this lunatic from British Isles called Brennius and sacked the living daylights out of Rome. And of course they don't tell you this stuff in history, but basically set up the format ready for dictator kind of idea in Rome. So that were an interesting. So the law, or the oldest one that we still have and use, or of course they don't want you to know and use it because they want you on the road, would be the right to the highway. I do have that on site, so I'll put a link up underneath for you to have a nosy. Then the next one would probably be the Magna Carta. And then you've got the laws before the Magna Carta are tied into militia. So all these common customs are nothing to do with Parliament. They're not parliamentary, so it's nothing to do with that. This is England, common custom, because from Alfred, of course, the land was called England, but made up of laws that previously were afforded to the Britons, as it were. So he pulled together the old laws and started to build England on that basis. So they're then are not parliamentary, so that's a distinction again. Now there's other common customs that we call common law, and just push it in as though it's part of the English common law, case law, acts of Parliament. No. So we have to, and he's done us a favour, this guy, by putting it in such a descriptive presentation, and simple as well, which is excellent. So I've put that on my face here. I suppose I can put a link to that video under here as well after. Well worth a listen. It's not long and laborious, and he just gets stuck in, and he explains also that the true meaning and form of trial by jury, basically the judge wasn't a judge, he was a convener. He wasn't allowed to tell, and the jury decided everything and sentence, and they didn't have to give reason as to why they decided yea or nay. No judge, he was a convener, not a judge, so he had no say whatsoever. Which is why when I put some paperwork in about 2016, I said if they want to pursue this matter, I'll have a trial by jury, not jury trial. A jury trial is a different thing again. The judge is in full control. The jury might as well not be there. You know what I'm saying? And the juries have to be of your peers, so people at the same standing as you. They can't have fruit bats from all over the shop if they're complete fruit bats. If you're fantastic and amazing, can't do that. They have to find fantastic and amazing. So there's a lot more to that kind of law, what England is, that meets the eye. And again, it's contrary to a lot of the English parliamentary acts, because they're always trying to chip away at it, as it were. So this whole system of the crown has now been moved, as it were, into this parliamentary garbage. So thanks Cromwell. I mean, Cromwell, for all his sins, and he were a sinner, he put us back on merchants, he didn't have the right idea waltzing into Parliament with his armed guard and saying some paraphrase to the like, say what? Say what, motherfucker? This is how it is, pal. And shut your mouth. Anybody want to chat, we're going to shoot you. I like that. We may be due, they do say that history repeats itself. Maybe we need to get in Parliament, armed guard, and put them all under house arrest until they agree to do everything we say, or they're going to get the bottom smacked. That's one way. The other way, of course, is what I've said, we're going to have to hold an amnesty on all these people, but they have to give up their handlers. I mean, I struggle today because a lot of them today are these program leaders, so they're not necessarily operating from the standpoint of blackmail, but a lot of the grandees, or most of them in the political class, are. So nab them first. Give them the thing, you know what I'm saying? The chance here. You amnesty for what you've been done, but here's how it is. You confess completely, so it's on the record. We don't have to put it on ITV. It doesn't have to be known. It just has to be known to the committees that you set up. But more importantly, it's who's holding this against you. Easy. Piss easy politics, you get your politics back. Because at the moment, it's in the hands of these blackmail networks. Billionaires, running the cabinet through the Privy Council. You've got big ears flapping around in the background, pretty useless, can't take regal power yet, even though he would appear to be doing so. We know he's going to try and fudge the coronation oath. We know it. We're on it. So there's all sorts going on. In there. You know what I mean? And meanwhile, this guy's come out and he's talking sense. I really advise you watch it. It's not a long one. You're not going to bore you. I'll just give you an idea as And we're all just slightly off again, where there's real law, then there's the parliamentary law, and then, of course, the other side of the parliamentary law, which, as you're on the SESCV, as the trustee, or dead, as it were, they always have to represent. There's a necromancy going on there. They have the Admiralty, just to deal with the dead, the fools and umpties, etc. And not that I'm calling you that, but that's they've set the system up. So you've that, you've got the parliamentary law, which again, I've said, you look into it, you can literally use it, it is, but you'd have to get rid of the Act of Union, as Graham Moore quite rightly tells us, because that is the bind, and it's the first bankruptcy of both crowns. And, of course, not good. We can see the end results of that. Just look out your window. Look in the news. Just see what's going on. So we don't like it. We don't want it, really, do we not? So yeah, there we go. Anyway, what's you guys saying? And then we'll tottle on to a bit of banking. And then we'll get into words, because you can take part in this one. I think it's probably a right good idea that we do it. Anyway, let's not jump ahead. I do that quite often. So Mew says, good evening, one and all. Good evening to you. James says, 100% and clapping his hands. Paul says, good evening, Sean and everyone. Slipknot says, all right, Sean, everybody. All right to you. And he's got a yin-yang purple. Purple. So that's Slipknot there. And Trev. Mark says, howdy. Hello, Mark. Slipknot says, sound is not so hot. Okay. Gremlins. Always this. Actually, I did forget to. There we go. There we go. Gremlins in my computer. Because I never touch the input volume. So, anyway. Sorry about that, chaps. If you couldn't hear me, I do apologise. It does make it a bit crap, doesn't it, if I'm waffling on, and you can't hear what I'm saying. Or maybe not. Public notice says, so thanks for that, Trev. Hello, Sean, an old man, woman, legal entities, public officials acting in official capacity. I command all legal entities to vacate this room. Now the fun begins. Well, there we go. We've had the expellation ritual from public notice. Well done, that man. Poiwa Music says, evening all. Little bird is telling me that your music's getting a little bit better there, Paulie boy. So I might have to start calling him Nick Warren. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. Untitled says, good evening all, good man Sean. Hello, Untitled. And he says, hit the like. We command it. We don't care. Public notice says, hit the thumbs up, people. So that's twice now. If you get it a third time, it's low. You know it. LFX gets the thumbs up on a emoji. Joining the dot says, greetings all. Cos says, so, time for some Lancashire hot pot. Yeah, and he's got a dinosaur pink. A pink dinosaur for Cos. He's been on the gay parade. So there's the pink dinosaur. Mew says, how is the sound quality for all? I have headphones on, but turned up. Right, well, it should be better now, I think, because the Gremlins have been in again and turned down my input volume. So, Paul says, sound good, Mew. Yeah, so we think we've sorted it now. Sound is okay, says joining the dots. Cos says sound is good. Excellent, 5 times. That's brilliant. So we're on. Hi, Sean, and everybody says, Treen. Hello, Treen, how are you? Happy days. Are you having trouble? Slipknot says, Mew. Alright, Sean, and all the good men and women, the last pillar. And Mew says, Ed, turn the headphones down quick. Oh, did I definitely? My apologies. And an emoji. 2 cry emojis. PY has a big teeth emoji. And Debbie, hiya Debbie. Back from a trip to that, you know where? It's to that naughty place. Good evening to you, Debbie. And it's a smiley emoji. So we're on. We're all rocking. Right, so I'm glad to hear you're fine, Tree. Good. Good. Now then. So somebody sent me, I don't know what's happening, but somebody must be, I mean, I don't mind, because it's actually good data, and if it's not, I can flick it out, but people keep subscribing my email to Substacks and all this kind of stuff. And to be fair, some of it comes through, and it's quite good stuff. And one in particular sends me a shitload, so I want like 10 at a time sometimes. And all about this, the theatre that everybody's been acting in the last 3 years. Some interesting data, of course, we don't do it on here, but I will get round at some point to sticking some of what's worth it and new on the old website. So I'll do that at some point. But one in particular came today, and it was interesting. It was a piece from somebody's, I think it says probably a known blog or something like that, but a bit new to me. But anyway, and it's about the Federal Reserve, which I thought would be a good start off, just to get this in your minds, because we do forget. I mean, I know you've probably read it before when you've come across all sorts of stuff, watched it on videos, but this just pretty much sticks it together. And I'm going to add a little bit just to remind people that we're not actually at this stage, what we're looking at now, we're not looking at the main players, we're looking at the exterior court for these bloodlines and the branch managers for these financiers as they come down into the West. Bear in mind, the East has the same format, so it'll have same personages, same families, same corporations. But of course, we're focusing on what's gone on here. It's pretty difficult to find it in China unless you're pretty savvy with how that place works. And most of us aren't. Apart from that, they like robots, AI, and they like killing people. So, and locking them in their house. Anyway, so this is the one. And if I transition that, we're in business. So that's groovy. Now, and I'm not even on it. So that's, oh, wait a minute. There we go. So it says the Federal Reserve Cartel, 8 families own the USA, BIS, IMF, and World Bank. So the families you're going to know, they're not new, but again, when you've studied Carol Quigley, Eustace Mullins, people like that, the others that come out like that last that come out with Skull and Bones, diaries after books that they give them out after her father died. I can't remember her name. Love the girl. She was with Reagan's administration, I think. But she pretty much gave you verbatim her father's books that they give out to Yale Skull and Bones members every year. We learnt a lot from that. She was citing other people that we knew about as well, like Sutton. And this is where you get the big picture, that we can see down here, all these names are but branch managers for the financial, or the financiers for the royal court, the ultimate royal court. And of course, the Rothschilds play that role. We looked at the Kanduri, we looked at the Dangour, we've looked at the, what's the other one? I can't remember just offhand. We've looked at these other families, we've traced how they've pushed them into India, into China, a long time ago. And before that, it were going on as well. So we've looked at all that. So we can see that picture is what you say, you're looking at the higher games going on above all this kind of stuff. But anyway, this is by the Hurlin Report, and it says, who owns the Federal Reserve? Read the story on the role of BIS, the World Bank and IMF in controlling world assets. It says they are the Goldman Sachs, Rockefellers, Lehman's and Liebs of New York, the Rothschilds of Paris and London, the Warburgs of Hamburg, the Lazards of Paris, and the Israel Moses Seifs of Rome. Many of the bank stockholders reside in Europe. The US government had an historical distrust of BIS, lobbying unsuccessfully for its demise in the 1944 post-World War II Bretton Woods Conference. I mean, the Americans, they were so against all this for such a long time. You know what I mean? Lincoln were against it. JFK moved against it. It's the Americans, everybody calls them this, that, the other. It's the Americans that gave this world a semblance of freedom, because while they were there in the background ready to support any attack on freedom, that kept freedom in the mix. These bums, and you're looking at this and you can see that this is how they've actually taken over the domestic system of America through the installation of the Federal Reserve and all that comes off it, CIA, FBI, etc. All these secretive military, private organisations, your Cherry Marines, K. Griggs gives you. They're in the American militaries, but they're not of it. They're running it. They basically hijacked the American military, like they hijacked pretty much the British military through the 1700s and the 1800s. They hijacked that. Then they got into America. You got the Titanic and the killing of those 3 guys. You've got installation of the Federal Reserve, although they pretty much achieved that 10 years before, but that was just the... And then in comes the First World War. You can see how they've took over. So if we were all to keep going on about it's the Americans, it's the French, it's the this, it's nonsense. It's all our nations have been took over by this Prussian Hanseatic League system, which if you trace that back further back, you're looking at everything that came through the Crusades. When that changed everything. Far from, Europe invading the Middle East, they went there and brought back the Middle East and beyond into our nations. And look at the trouble we've had ever since. So that's how I've seen the game. It says, instead, the 8 families' power was exacerbated with the Bretton Woods creation of the IMF and the World Bank. Bretton Woods became a boon to the 8 families. The IMF and World Bank were central to this new world order, writes Dean Henderson at the Harlan Report and Free 21. The 4 horsemen of banking, or Banking of America, JP Morgan, Chase, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo, owned the 4 horsemen of oil, ExxonMobil, Royal Dutch Shell, BP, and Chevron Texaco, in tandem with Deutsche Bank, BNP, Barclays, and other European old money behemoths. Yep, so these are the old money families. This is how they're known in the elite circles. They're known as old money. That's how other people talk about it. So it's known, they're known. So you look at like Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, when they took over Labour, this is what you're seeing. They're representing this old money systems. The Fondi, everything that's under now the mantle of the Vatican Bank. They've got control of all of our instruments in our systems. So okay, where am I? Companies under Rockefeller control include ExxonMobil, Chevron, Texaco, BP, Amoco, Marathon Oil, Freeport, McMoran, Quaker Oats, Asarco, United Delta Northwest, ITT, International Harvester, Xerox, Boeing, Westinghouse, Hewlett-Packard, Honeywell, International Paper, Pfizer, Motorola, Monsanto, Union Carbide, and General Foods, all coming under the Rockefeller. That's not including all the foundations. You know what I mean? So when they might have broke up Standard Oil, but they certainly didn't break up the control. So a bit like John Lang's, when I worked there, I was told that the reason why he split it up into Lang's Northwest, Lang's Southeast, was because the government were threatening to nationalise the construction industry. So that's why all these companies split up into divisions. Ultimately, before that, they were just one big company. But obviously then they benefit from that, and they certainly would have benefited if they had nationalised it. So there's a country that's cancelled its contract with Pfizer. Thailand. Because one of the princesses is in a bit of trouble. So that I saw just before I came on, so that I thought were interesting. The contracts are now going to be nullified, which is the word they used. The Federal Reserve cartel, who owns the Federal Reserve, their monopoly over the global economy does not end at the edge of the oil patch. According to company 10K filings to the SEC, the 4 horsemen of banking are among the top 10 stockholders of virtually every Fortune 500 corporation. Yet, especially Vanguard and BlackRock and Goldman Sachs, which seems to be going into the background a little bit at the moment, does it not? So who owns the Federal Reserve, and are the stockholders in these money centre banks? This information is guarded much more closely. My queries to bank regulatory agencies regarding stock ownership in the top 25 US bank holding companies were given Freedom of Information Act status before being denied on national security grounds. This is rather ironic, since many of the bank stockholders reside in Europe. One important repository for the wealth of the global oligarchy that owns these bank holding companies is US Trust Corporation, founded in 1853 and now owned by Bank of America. A recent US Trust corporate director and honorary trustee was Walter Rothschild. Other directors included Daniel Davison of JP Morgan Chase, Richard Tucker of ExxonMobil, Daniel Roberts of Citigroup, and Marshall Swartz of Morgan Stanley. J.W. McAllister, an oil industry insider with House of Saud connections, wrote in The Grim Reaper that information he acquired from Saudi bankers cited 80% ownership of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, by far the most powerful Fed branch, by just 8 families, 4 of which reside in the US. Okay. Federal Reserve Cartel. Who owns the Federal Reserve? They are the Goldman Sachs, Rockefellers, Lehmans and Kuhn, Leobs of New York, the Rothschilds of Paris and London, the Warburgs of Hamburg, the Lazards of Paris, and the Israel Moses Seifs of Rome. CPA Thomas D. Schoff corroborates McAllister's claims, adding that 10 banks control all 12 Federal Reserve Bank branches. He names N.M. Rothschild of London, Rothschild Bank of Berlin, Warburg Bank of Hamburg, Warburg Bank of Amsterdam, Lehman Brothers of New York, Lazard Brothers of Paris, Kuhn Bank of New York, Israel Moses Seif Bank of Italy, Goldman Sachs of New York, and JP Morgan Chase Bank of New York. So how does the Vatican Bank fit into that? Now that'd be telling, wouldn't it? Where is it in the hierarchy? A lot of people would say it's the ultimate, and it could be. I never actually managed to. I found a lot of ideas, but you couldn't chase them. You couldn't find source documents for that kind of stuff. So it still always bothered me. So if you found out what role the Vatican Bank actually did play, and you could show it, that'd answer a lot of questions in relation to how the Vatican, what position the Vatican has actually played in this whole charade. Because it's important, that place holds all our surnames. Yeah, as we went through on the live stream a couple of months ago. Your surname belongs to the bank, to the church. So then you're given or Christian or first name, separated, aren't we? So left and right. So if we're on the vertical, on the left you've got your given or Christian or first name, whichever you want to use. I've noticed now online it's 4 names. And then at the other side, on the right, you've got the church and the surname. Yeah? So we've got to look at it like this. The church controls the surname. What does that actually mean? That's what's important that people start to have a look at, because maybe things are not as it may seem, and that it's essential that's given up in order. So I'll say no more on that, but it might be an interesting study. So how I've presented it there, as it were. So let's have a look. Have we done that? So, Schoff lists William Rockefeller, Paul Warburg, Jacob Schiff, and James Stillman as individuals who own large shares of the Fed. The Schiffs are insiders at Kuhn Loeb. Is it Loeb? The Stillmans are Citigroup insiders who married into the Rockefeller clan at the turn of the century. Eustace Mullins came to the same conclusion in his book The Secrets of the Federal Reserve, in which he displays charts connecting the Fed and its member banks to the families of Rothschild, Warburg, Rockefeller, and the others. The control that these banking families exert over the global economy cannot be overstated and is quite intentionally shrouded in secrecy. The corporate media arm is quick to discredit any information, exposing this private central banking cartel as conspiracy theory. yet the facts remain. And of course, this system that we're seeing now, because we can see it, has been set up in the East. And what they're doing now is they're going to transfer. Yeah? Because if they didn't, then their game would be destroyed by the West as people wake up. The East, being completely ignorant to the real games and mechanics of this system, will protect it. So there you've got two sides, haven't you? And you can see them doing that right now. Everything's China's fault. I mean, the balloons. I mean, what? If you look on any of these satellite maps at any given time, it'll show you the satellites, but you can also flick it and it'll just show you the balloons. There's balloons all over the show, especially over places like South America, parts of Africa, in order that people can get internet. So these balloons are not a new thing. So I haven't really looked into it, but is there evidence that they are actually Chinese? Or is this just another means of getting everybody excited? Because I'm pretty sure if it were Chinese, they'd have blown it to pieces the minute it entered US airspace, or at least if it entered any kind of military airspace. They wouldn't have had a big song and dance about it. They'd have just blown it out of the sky and then maybe reported it. So it doesn't really make sense to me, to be honest, apart from diversion. You know, who knows? The House of Morgan story, the Federal Reserve Bank, was born in 1913, the same year US banking scion J.P. Morgan died and the Rockefeller Foundation was formed. The House of Morgan, yeah, because the Rockefeller Foundation, so Norman Dodds gives you a great insight, because he was tasked by the Rees Commission to actually understand what these foundations were doing, and he was given full access to the libraries, the minutes, the notes. And this guy, you could tell he was a bit like I felt when I started to realise years ago that things weren't right. It's quite traumatic, and he was traumatised. More so, the lady that he employed to help him, she was in a real bad way, because obviously seeing the minutes of the foundation's meetings and their actions and such sickened him to the core. So he reported all that. It's Norman Todd. Again, there's videos out there well worth people having a look at. I might actually see if I can find them and put them up under this. But these are the kind of guys that were... So before internet went crazy with, you know, conspiracy theory and madness, those are the sort of source references that you use then to trace back the documents, the stories they were presenting, the personages that they were presenting. So you could say a big chunk of the backdrop to all this serious undermining and revealing what's going on came from guys like that, you know what I mean? Not nut job stuff, jingle jangle. And people forget that. You know, these are where a lot of this data came from, especially Carol Quigley. You know, a lot of people moan and bemused, but you actually listen to what Carol Quigley said or read his books, and you can see the picture. You can see the picture if you listen to Normal Dodd, because Normal Dodd gives it you. You can see the picture. Is it Peg Luxick? No. No, she did the education. Yeah, I can see her face and I can't remember her name. She's a lovely lady, old girl. I think she's still around. And she just gives you full... She's telling you, you know, from the Skull and Bones own written books that they give out to everybody. She goes through it. It worked in with Sutton's stuff, and who were the other guy? There were another couple of guys. But they all interconnect. You seek out one, you'll find the others. It's that kind of... And that basically is the foundation for a lot of the data that what I call real researchers, real guys who are trying to help people see. That's the kind of stuff that they're working on. Not, you know, let's pull it all out of theosophy. Let's pull it all out of... Where they've manipulated data. They've manipulated things to form this new shindig that they've got going with the Noahide. So, anyway, where were we? Mullins wrote the Rothschilds prepared to operate... oh, wait a minute, I've missed a bit. No, I haven't. Mullins wrote that the Rothschilds preferred to operate anonymously in the US behind the facade of J.P. Morgan and Company, or author Gabriel Kolko stated Morgan's activities in 1895 to 1896 in selling US gold bonds in Europe were based on an alliance with the House of Rothschild. The Morgan financial octopus wrapped its tentacles quickly around the globe. Morgan Grenfell operated in London. Morgan et Co. ruled Paris. The Rothschilds' Lambert cousins set up Drexel and Company in Philadelphia. The Lamberts were big here in lots of different arenas, especially timber, locally anyway. So they're cousins of the old Rothschilds. The Federal Reserve Cartel, who owns the Federal Reserve again, I don't know why I've got that in. The House of Morgan catered to the Astors, DuPonts, Guggenheims, Vanderbilts and Rockefellers. It financed the launch of AT&T, General Motors, General Electric, the DuPont, like the London-based Rothschilds and Barings banks. Morgan became part of the power structure in many countries. Hohenzollern, now there's a family to seek out. They are behind everything, in everything. They've been breeding their own in everywhere. It's for a long, long time. Out of, I think Frankfurt, but they're much bigger than that. And before that it was Thurnham taxis, which you don't really hear much about these days. So you've got Liechtenstein. People don't realise that Liechtenstein is one serious financial, I would even say probably the holding bank for the holding banks, whether they are offshore or near. But Liechtenstein, we did look into it years ago and we were quite shocked at what we were finding. And I probably did write a report about it, but so far I've not found it in any of my saved stuff from all them years ago. But Liechtenstein is an interesting little principality. I think it's a principality, I can't remember just offhand. By 1890, the House of Morgan was lending to Egypt's central bank, financing Russian railroads, floating Brazilian provincial government bonds, and funding Argentine public works projects. A recession in 1893 enhanced Morgan's power. That year, Morgan saved the US government from a bank panic, forming a syndicate to prop up government reserves. With a shipment of $62 million worth of Rothschild gold, Morgan was the driving force behind Western expansion in the US, financing and controlling westbound railroads through voting trusts. So they were setting up the marshals, you know, when you look at the old cowboy films, and in come all these marshals and sheriffs and all that malarkey. Well, not so much sheriffs, the marshals were the ones working for this. The sheriffs were how the Americans set up the things, weren't it? And it was jail. Marshals, you're coming in with this corporate side of thing. And controlling westbound rails through voting trusts. Everything's trusts. In 1879, Cornelius Vanderbilt's Morgan financed New York Central Railroad gave preferential shipping rates to John D. Rockefeller's budding Standard Oil monopoly, cementing the Rockefeller-Morgan relationship. The House of Morgan now fell under Rothschild and Rockefeller family control. The Federal Reserve Cartel, who owns the Federal Reserve, a New York Herald headline read, "Railroad Kings form gigantic trust, J.P. appoint Morgan," who once stated, "Competition is a sin," now opined gleefully, "Think of it." All competing railroad traffic west of St. Louis placed in the control of about 30 men. Morgan and Edward Herriman's banker Kuhn Leob held a monopoly over the railroads, while banking dynasties Lehman, Goldman Sachs and Lazard joined the Rockefellers in controlling the US industrial base. Now if you look, and I think David Icke brought a lot of this out, weren't there a major mammoth company based out of France, King Louis, that was supposed to have a child kid who'd been supposedly feigned death, ended up there. What were it called? A massive operation. And I can't think of it offhand at the moment. But a lot of these companies were in its hands before all this. Yeah, I nearly said it there. No, it's gone. Persia. Persia Empire, but it were, and I can't, there were actually some that you'd recognise. Anyway, never mind. So they're just swapping, changing. into different forms of everything. Form being an interesting word. In 1903, Bankers Trust was set up by the 8 families. Wait a minute. Yeah, I've done that. My apologies. In 1903, Bankers Trust was set up by the 8 families. Benjamin Strong of Bankers Trust was the first governor of the New York Federal Reserve Bank. The 1913 creation of the Fed used the power of the 8 families to the military and diplomatic might of the US government. Fused, rather. So in 1913, it also fused these families to the military and State Department, the diplomatic side of things. And this is what they've done. In their overseas loans went unpaid, the oligarchs could now deploy US Marines to collect the debts. Can you see? Morgan Chase and Citibank formed an international lending syndicate. How they nick your armies, nick your countries. Just once they've got once they control your domestic, your state departments, etc., all these offices, then all is your office, your nation becomes just another arm to these. And they're doing that with everybody. They're doing it in Russia, they're doing it with China, India, everywhere. The House of Morgan was closer with the British House of Windsor and the Italian House of Savoy. The Kuhn-Leobs, Warburgs, Lehmans, Lazards, Israel, Moses, Seifs, and Goldman Sachs also had close ties to European royalty. Now, remember, European royalties since early 1800s and Victoria were all Rothschild sired. So they got rid of all the old monarchies and bloodlines running the monarchies and put in. So this is what was going on before they spread it over in America. So when it talks about close ties to European royalty, it doesn't matter which European royalty you're talking about. It goes back to Rothschild. So you can see how Rothschild is just the court financiers for this elite and hidden royalty. And that even all the royal families that we know are beneath the actual level of the Rothschilds as financiers. The puppets of them, fronts. Because they didn't want anybody knowing that your country, through its royalty, were being controlled by them. So they had to give you a face you understood, which is why I've said before, a lot of the recent negative, they're trapped. They've been captured for some reason. Maybe it's something to do with Atlantis, I don't know. But they've been captured by these people. They go out their way to capture them. I think they're terrified of them, to be honest. So all the European royalty from Queen Victoria, well, let's say mid-1850s, you're talking about these Rothschild aristocracy across Europe. No. The old school families that history shows you. By 1895, Morgan controlled the flow of gold in and out of the US. The first American wave of mergers were in its infancy and was being promoted by the bankers. In 1897, there were 69 industrial mergers. By 1899, there were 1,200. So, look, like they're doing today, like they've been doing since 80s when they were privatising everything. They're monopolising everything. Well, look, as it says, in 1897, there were 69 industrial mergers. And by 1899, so 2 years later, there were 1,200 mergers. So what we're witnessing now in the far on of this incorporation and monopolising it, this is exactly what they do before the resets. And as we discussed the other week, they did a reset from 1850 to 1900. And they give themselves 50 years. It looks like they give themselves 50 years again because they launched everything in 2000 after Blair had prepped the way and Brown here. Launched all these new millennial operations. And you look at some of the plan documents they've got. Yeah, 2030 is in there. But ultimately, there's a lot that they're not setting out to achieve until 2050. And we do forget that if we're stuck on the 2030. If things to accomplish for 2030, originally they wanted to accomplish it for 21, but they've lengthened it to 2030. But ultimately, there's a lot of programs that they've got out there that are set for completion by 2050. So there's definitely something. There's correlation here too. 50 years resets. What they do in them resets, which is basically scoop up all commerce into their own hands, and then they can fund this reset. And in that 50 years, they're also pushing in what it is that they're going to have us bang as it after they turn that button, hit the big red button. Like with Second World War, from First World War to Second World War, in that period, they had the bankruptcy, they played about with our titles, they put our birth certificates on the stock market. They set up all these nationalised sort of organisations. But they launched them after the Second World War, when everybody were, shell-shocked and just ready for anything, really. And then they manipulated that generation that were born during the war to basically become holders of secrets, liars and deceivers, and rather selfish in this need they had to retire, because that sold out so much of our infrastructure to entities foreign to England. And that is what happened with that generation. And it's sad, because they're still with us, and there's a lot of them have still got power. And they're either still stuck in that secrets and deception, or they're wide awake, but obviously they're probably the black sheep in the family, always have been, because nobody believes them, because it's easier to just placate it, in it, which is what most people do. So by 1899, 1,200 mergers. So you can see there is a pattern. 50 years, monopolising everything through corporatism, so they can relaunch everything. Apparently in new hands when it's not, but it's in less hands. That's what monopoly is. That's where you get your pyramid shape from. And it's just got that way all the way through to the three World War strategy Albert Pike presented to them. And at the point now where they're at, it's the globe. These families, and I'm not just talking about these 8, these are branch managers, but the ultimate beneficiaries of this whole system, the hidden royalties, they are now stand ready to take up beneficiary role for the trust that incorporates every single nation on the planet, every asset beholden to those nations. And so it's not the end days of the biblical, but it's coming to the conclusion part of the great work of the ages, i.e. in setting up the system and fixing it. What they do after that, they class that as the Christmas birthdays rolled into one, because then they can say they've achieved this wish they have, that they want the entire earth to themselves, and they mean it. So that's probably where we're at now. They've got it global. In 1904, John Moody, founder of Moody's Investor Services, said it was impossible to talk of Rockefeller and Morgan interests as separate. Public distrust of the combined spread. Many considered them traitors working for European old money. Rockefeller Standard Oil, Andrew Carnegie's US Steel, and Edward Herriman's railroads were all financed by banker Jacob Schiff at Kunlob, who worked closely with the European Rothschilds. Several Western states banned the bankers. Populist preacher Williams Jennings Bryan was thrice the Democratic nominee for president from 1896 to 1908. The central theme of his anti-imperialist campaign was that America was falling into a trap of financial servitude to British capital. So it's inner city, isn't it? Temple capital, because it really didn't have much to do with British Isles, apart from they were shafting everybody. Teddy Roosevelt defeated Bryan in 1908, but was forced by his spreading populist wildfire to enact the Sherman Antitrust Act. He then went after the Standard Oil Trust. In 1912, the Peugeot hearings were held, addressing concentration of power in Wall Street. So, in 1912, so they were crying about it from 1896. They will have done everything they can to make it so that once this were in place, it benefited them, not wrecked them. And then to the people, everybody, yet so much's been done, we've curtailed the power. And that's the kind of power to deceive. They've got. And if you look at, there's a film, isn't there, with that geezer. I can't stand him, but he's actually a good actor. I said it then. It's like an hillbilly film where there's three guys going on an adventure and there's a cow on a roof. Do you know what I mean? I forgot what it's called. Or Father, or something like that. Or Brother. And so what I took from that was quite interesting, because you're looking at that time, and Americans as a people have got the towns, they've got all the trade going and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden they've got these clowns in the cars, loudspeakers, creating a system of power, whether people like it or not, through fairs and exhibitions, bringing them in, introducing them to this stuff. Money people say, well, if I get in, I'll do this. It's like a parasitic, innit? It's that parasite and how it does it. So I thought, watching that film, you could see how that was starting to build in that time. Whereas if that hadn't have happened, everybody would have just been getting on with the thing and everybody were happy. But, yeah, interesting. That same year, Mrs. Edward Harriman sold her substantial shares in New York's Guarantee Trust Bank to J.P. Morgan, creating Morgan Guarantee Trust. Judge Louis Brandeis convinced President Woodrow Wilson to call for an end to interlocking board directorates. In 1914, the Clayton Antitrust Act was passed. Jack Morgan, J.P. Appoint's son and successor, responded by calling on Morgan clients Remington and Winchester to increase arms production. He argued that the US needed to enter World War I. Well, of course, we've gone through that, haven't we? How we were surrendering the Brits in the first year. In came the Rothschilds, said, no, don't do that. We will get America into the war. The kickback is that the UK government will have to support our call for Israel. The idiots, it was the war cabinet, it's again unelected, bunch of hoity-toits running the war, agreeing with the Rothschilds. That's why it was set up, to ensure we lost in that first. So that's why you see the Somme, which up here where I'm from, millions were dead in a couple of days. This is why they were doing this. They wanted us to surrender so they could force the British Empire, as it was known to the world, to be supportive of the Firestarter over there in the old Middle East. So we've gone through that. And he said he argued that the US needed to enter World War I, goaded by the Carnegie Foundation. And this is in 1914. Yeah, so we were into it, and by the end of that first year, we were going to surrender because we were annihilated. Wilson accommodated, so he did. As Charles Tansel wrote in America Goes to War, even before the clash of arms, the French firm of Rothschild, Freres, cabled to Morgan Company in New York, suggesting the flotation of a loan of $100 million, a substantial part of which was to be left in the US to pay for French purchases of American goods. The House of Morgan financed half of the US war effort, while receiving commissions for lining up contractors like GE, that's General Electric, DuPont, US Steel, Kennecott, and Asarco, all were Morgan clients. Morgan also financed the British Boer War in South Africa and the Franco-Prussian War. The 1909 Paris Peace Conference was presided over by Morgan. The 1919 Paris Peace Conference was presided over by Morgan, which led both German and Allied reconstruction efforts. In the 1930s, populism resurfaced in America after Goldman Sachs, Lehman Bank and others profited from the crash of 1929. So we went through that, didn't we? The world fairs get everybody from the rural into the urban, then they can start getting ideas into people's heads, backing it, setting up politics, also that they can start to procure war. Because it just puts you further into debt. You borrow into build, you borrow into rebuild. If you've invaded and beaten a country, you need money to administer it. It's just, you can't. War is the game of this, which is why Yombom talked about the military-industrial complex. I can't remember which one it were. Glad I could see him. Anyway, the Federal Reserve Cartel, House Banking Committee Chairman Louis McFadden said of the Great Depression, it was no accident. It was a carefully contrived occurrence. the international bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair here so they might emerge as rulers of us all. Well, this is what they're doing again. Senator Gerald Nye, DND, and they're putting fronts in. Yeah? So you're looking at a front here, but really it's this bunch again at the back. So then the next lot should be looking back instead of looking forward, because you're next. Nye later produced a document titled The Next War. Hang on. Yep. Senator General Nye chaired a munitions investigation in 1936. Nye concluded that the House of Morgan had plunged the US into World War I to protect loans and create a booming arms industry. So that's how they got America into the war. They had them by that point, which is why they could go into the British and say, don't surrender, we'll get America in the war. Nye later produced a document titled The Next War, which cynically referred to the old goddess of democracy trick, through which Japan could be used to lure the US into World War II. Well, this is the 3 World War strategy, isn't it? So that's what they were obviously operating to. You know, they're talking about the next war already. In 1937, Interior Secretary Harold Ickes warned of the influence of America's 60 families. Historian Ferdinand Lundberg later penned a book of the exact same title. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas decried Morgan influence. The most pernicious one in industry and finance today, Jack Morgan, responded by nudging the US towards World War II. Morgan had close relations with the Iwasaki and Dan families, Japan's 2 wealthiest clans, who have owned Mitsubishi and Mitsui, respectively, since the companies emerged from 17th century shogunates. When Japan invaded Manchuria, slaughtering Chinese peasants in Nanking, Morgan downplayed the incident. Morgan also had close relations with Italian fascist Benito Mussolini, while German Nazi Dr. Hjalmar Schacht was a Morgan Bank liaison during World War II. Yeah, Morgan, Rothschild, what were it? Anti-Semitic? Anti-Jewish? No. Was it heck? After the war, Morgan representative met with Schacht at the Bank of International Settlement, or the BIS in Basel, Switzerland. The House of Rockefeller, BIS is the most powerful bank in the world, a global central bank for the 8 families who control the private central banks of almost all Western and developing nations. The first president of BIS was Rockefeller banker Gates Magera, an official at Chase Manhattan and the Federal Reserve. Magera was the grandfather of former CIA director Richard Helms. The Rockefellers, like the Morgans, had close ties to London. David Icke writes in Children of the Matrix that the Rockefellers and Morgans were just gophers for the European Rothschilds. I'd say he's correct. The Federal Reserve cartel, who owns BIS, is owned by the Federal Reserve, Bank of England, Bank of Italy, Bank of Canada, Swiss National Bank, Nederlandsche Bank, Bundesbank, and Bank of France. Well, I'm surprised that the Deutsche Bank's not in there, to be honest. Maybe that's above it all, I don't know. Historian Carol Quigley wrote in his epic book Tragedy and Hope that BIS was part of a plan to create a world system of financial control in private hands able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole, to be controlled in a feudalistic fashion by the central banks of the world, acting in concert by secret agreements. And their game is climate, 15-minute cities, lockdowns, medical procedures. You can see now what their real game is. You know, they've set it up in China already. It's just a case of transferring it over here. First, China has to become supreme to the West. This is what we're seeing now with the petrodollar. It's not good. I don't like it. You know, anything coming off America in my book isn't good. If you believe in freedom and the Western ideal. And I do. Not that I believe in it, but I've applied myself to the many different formats that are out there in the world. History's right way back. Nothing comes close to what was achieved in what we today call Western civilization. Islam had its own time. Well, not Islam actually, because when the Arabs and the Persians, they were highly advanced for a very long time until the rise of Islam. Then that went to its opposite. So it had a contrary effect on the Arabs themselves, and instead of being the height of, and when we only knew about ancient Greece because through the Arabs, their culture, and all that was lost when Islam became quite potent. So you know, the last one that we're looking at was coming from the West. Anyway, we probably just screwed it up, haven't we, basically. The US government had a historical distrust of BIS, lobbying unsuccessful for its demise at the 1944 post-World War II Bretton Woods Conference. So they knew the crack. Even in then, Americans knew what was going on. But they didn't have the power. Instead, the eight families' power was exacerbated with the Bretton Woods creation of the IMF and the World Bank. The US Federal Reserve only took shares in BIS in September 1994. You see that? So, 44 they were moaning about it. Right up until 1994 they were moaning about it. But then they took it. And holds at least 10% of monetary reserves for at least 80 of the world's central banks, the IMF and other multilateral institutions. So it took till 1994 for them to drag America in, kicking and screaming. Who were in 94? Bush, Clinton. So once, look at what happened. So no certain, well, 94 because they got us into Gulf War, didn't they, first? But look what they did to Yugoslavia. Absolutely must be because they'd managed to get the US in a share of the BIS. It serves as financial agent for international agreements, collects information on global economy and serves as a lender of last resort to prevent global financial collapse. The BIS promotes an agenda of monopoly capitalism. It gave a bridge loan to Hungary in the 1990s to ensure privatisation of that country's economy. It served as a conduit for eight families' funding of Adolf Hitler, led by the Warburgs, J. Henry Schroeder, and Mendelssohn Bank of Amsterdam. Many researchers assert that BIS is at the nadir of global drug money laundering. It's no coincidence that BIS is headquartered in Switzerland, favourite hiding place for the wealth of the global aristocracy, and headquarters for the Peter Italian Freemasons, Alpina Lodge, and Nazi International. Other institutions which the eight families control include the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Conference, and the World Trade Organization. Bretton Woods was a boon to the eight families. The IMF and World Bank were central to the New World Order. In 1944, the first bank bonds were floated by Morgan Stanley and First Boston. The French Lazard family became more involved in the House of Morgan interests. Lazard Frères, France's biggest investment bank, is owned by the Lazard and David Weil families, who are all Genoese banking scions represented by Michel Daviv. So there you go, Genoese and Venetian. So many of these European families now claiming to be monarchs, you know, because it's a new breed, come through Genoa and Venice. So, and the same with the Holy See, you know, the families that provide the popes and working in sync. But everybody stops at the Vatican and says, oh, it's there. No. If you can see it, it ain't the top. But we are under revelations now, remember, so we are pushing. The Federal Reserve cartel, who owns a recent chairman of the CEO of Citigroup, was Sanford Wheel. In 1968, Morgan Guarantee launched Euroclear, a Brussels-based bank clearing system for euro-dollar securities. It was the first such automated endeavour, some took to calling Euroclear the Beast. Brussels serves headquarters for the new European Central Bank and for NATO. In 1973, Morgan officials met secretly in Bermuda to illegally resurrect the old House of Morgan, 20 years before the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed. Morgan and the Rockefellers provided the financial backing for Merrill Lynch, boosting it into the big five of US investment banking. Merrill is now part of Bank of America. J.D. Rockefeller used his oil wealth to acquire Equitable Trust, which had gobbled up several large banks and corporations by the 1920s. The Great Depression helped consolidate Rockefeller's power. His Chase Bank merged with Kuhn-Leob's Manhattan Bank to form Chase Manhattan, cementing a long-time family relationship. The Kuhn-Leobs had financed, along with Rothschild's, Rockefeller's quest to become king of the oil patch. National City Bank of Cleveland provided John D. with the money needed to embark upon his monopolization of the US oil industry. The bank was identified in congressional hearings as being one of the three Rothschild-owned banks in the US during the 1870s. In the 1870s, look, when Rockefeller first incorporated the Standard Oil of Ohio, which, you know, if the Rockefellers are just managers for the Rothschilds like many other big families, that makes perfect sense. So back as the 1870s that were known. One Rockefeller standalone partner was Edward Harkness, whose family came to control Chemical Bank. Another was James Stillman, whose family controlled manufacturers Hanover Trust. Both banks have merged under the J.P. Morgan Chase umbrella. Two of Stillman's daughters married two of William Rockefeller's sons. The two families control a big chunk of Citigroup as well. In the insurance business, the Rockefellers control Metropolitan Life, Equitable Life, Prudential. Now, Prudential, if you remember, were big here. So many of your pensions from state were transferred into the Prudential. The New York and the New York Life. Rockefeller banks control 25% of all assets of the 50 largest US commercial banks and 30% of all assets of the 50 largest insurance companies. Insurance companies, the first in the US, was launched by Freemasons through their Woodmans of America and play a key role in the Bermuda drug money shuffle. I won't be surprised if this Bermuda Triangle things are disappearing, because that's where they do all the dealing and there's nobody's allowed to go. It won't be surprising me if it's just kind of that kind of a play. Oh, things are disappearing. Yeah, well, they are. They're nicking everything. And doing the dodgy deals there. I suppose not so much nowadays as it goes into on internet. But companies under Rockefeller control include ExxonMobil, Chevron, Texaco, BP, Amoco, Marathon Oil, Freeport, McMoran, Quaker Oats, Soico, United Delta Northwest, IT&T, International Harvester, Xerox, Boeing, Westinghouse, Hewlett-Packard, Honeywell, International Paper, Pfizer, Motorola, Monsanto, Union Carbide, and General Foods, to name but a few. Rockefeller Foundation has close financial ties to both Ford and Carnegie Foundations, and they took over education. They took over the State Department. That's what Norman Dodd was teaching us. Other family philanthropic endeavours include Rockefeller Brothers Fund, Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, General Education Board, Rockefeller University, and the University of Chicago, which churns out a steady stream of far-right economists as apologists for international capital, including Milton Friedman. The Federal Reserve Cartel, the family owns 13 Rockefeller Plaza, where the national Christmas tree is lighted every year, and Rockefeller Center. David Rockefeller was instrumental in the construction of the World Trade Center towers. The main Rockefeller family home is Hulking Complex in upstate New York, known as Pocantico Hills. They also own a 32-room Fifth Avenue duplex in Manhattan, a mansion in Washington, D.C., Monte Sacro Ranch in Venezuela, coffee plantations in Ecuador, several farms in Brazil, an estate at Seal Harbor, Maine, and resorts in the Caribbean, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. The Dulles and Rockefeller families' cousins. Alan Dulles created the CIA, assisted the Nazis, covered up the Kennedy hit from his Warren Commission perch, and struck a deal with the Muslim Brotherhood. Brother John Foster Dulles, see, this is why the Arabs are involved. You know, it's the same people own the oil that owned it always, and they're now just putting Arabs in as a front step. It's their fault. Well, it's your elite's fault in Arabia because they've joined this shit. They killed your best opponents to it, and now you're left with this guy who's running it now on behalf of this lot. You know, it's Brother John Foster Dulles presided over the phony Goldman Sachs Trust before the 1929 stock market crash, and helped his brother overthrow governments in Iran and Guatemala, both with Skull and Bones, Council on Foreign Relations, and insiders, and 33-degree Masons. Now, Sean Ross had an interesting video put up where he's suggesting that the 30th degree is the real, where the real action is, and I've been inclined to agree, to be honest. So that might be worth a look as well, fellas. And ladies, the Rockefellers were instrumental in forming the depopulation-orientated Club of Rome. So this is where you get all your climate nonsense attached to the Round Table. So they're a branch of the Round Table, Cecil Rhodes, etc., Rothschild, blah, 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 De Beers, all that. Appointed Club of Rome at the family estate in Bellagio, Italy. The Pocantico Hills estate gave birth to the Trilateral Commission. The family is another Round Table satellite. The family is a major funder of the eugenics movement, which spawned Hitler, human cloning, and the current DNA obsession in US scientific circles, or rather, Epstein circles. John Rockefeller Jr. headed the Population Council until his death. His namesake son is a senator from West Virginia. Brother Winthrop Rockefeller was Lieutenant Governor of Arkansas and remains the most powerful man in the state. In October 1975, interview with Playboy magazine, Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, who was also Governor of New York, articulated his family's patronising worldview. I'm a great believer in planning, economic, social, political, military, total world planning. But of all the Rockefeller brothers, it's the Trilateral Commission founder and Chase Manhattan chairman David who has spearheaded the family's agenda on a global scale. He defended the Shah of Iran. I had no problem with Shah of Iran. The South African apartheid regime and Chilean Pinochet junta. He was the biggest financier of the CFR and TC, and during the Vietnam War, the Committee for an Effective and Durable Peace in Asia, a contract answer for those who made their living off the conflict. Nixon asked him to be Secretary of the Treasury, but Rockefeller declined the job, knowing his power was much greater at the helm of the Chase. So, there you go. Author Gary Allen writes in the Rockefeller File that in 1973, David Rockefeller met with 27 heads of state, including the rulers of Russia and China. Following the 1975 Nugan Bank CIA coup against Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitlam, his British Crown-appointed successor Malcolm Fraser sped to the US, where he met with President Gerald Ford after conferring with David Rockefeller. They control everything. Absolutely everything. And that's your bankers. That's what they're putting in here everywhere. You know? Now I've just got so I don't know what you make of that, but it's rather interesting. So I now just have to try and whiz over to done that. Just get it ready for. So I don't know what you make of that, but I mean I know a lot of you probably do know this stuff. But it's always worth just having another look. So I want that, and I can't find it so far. Oh yeah, that's why I can't find it, because I'm not showing it. Right, so I should now get this show. I think I'm going to have to shut something just to do as a set jobs. My apologies. Yeah, I'll shut that. Hope that's shut. That's now gone. Hopefully it might work. I don't know why that. There we go. Excellent. So, alright, I'm ready now for what we can have a bash at. Well, that took me a bit longer than I thought, actually, chaps, so my apologies. I hope it didn't bore you to tears. What are you guys saying? Oh. So, blood. Haha, I didn't bring back my contraband, says Demi. You won't be telling us if you didn't you? I don't know. Martin says, hello Martin, evening people. Hello Martin, your China. Cos says, Funny Fingers, Alien, and Half a Circle and a Star. I have no idea what they mean. Transapocalypse Ishia says, hi from today, Bulgaria to all. Hello to you, sir. Or lady. Trine says, evening to the latecomers. Haha, no, I'm not for a change. No, I noticed that. You're doing well. Mupit says, no American football tonight. Hi, Transpocalypse, welcome. So Andrea says, howdy people. Hello, Andrea. Debbie says, week off before Super Bowl. LFX says, ER all reserve like RE Venus. Oh, venue rather, my apologies. Untitled says, Bayer Germany bought Monsanto. Yes, and do you know why? Do you know why they bought it? Because nobody could understand it at first, because Monsanto were being sued to death. So what's actually happened is they've realised that using, you say Roundup, we know it's a chemical, but you know what it is. So they've learned that they can now pull down fruit and veg, or fruit mainly, in Africa a month early, as long as they spray it with glyphosate, and it will ripen on the journey to wherever it's going. So whereas before they were using it as a weed killer, and a lot of the data did show that by the time the crops are harvested, the soils, everything's got rid of the entire amount of the glyphosate. Now, they're putting it on just before, pulling it down early, putting it on. It slows down the ripening. So they can pull them down early so that by the time they get to where they're going, they're just starting to ripen. You're getting them gob full. You're getting them air full of glyphosate. It's worth a lot more to them now, and that's why Bayer bought it. Treen says, got Dean Henderson's book a couple of years ago. We're blessed and lucky to have your presence here tonight, says Mew Debbie Ahai Burke. She's laughing. Treen says, surname in all caps does not signify decapitation. Interesting, 13. A load of balloons, baloney. I used to work for Lionel Astor in the 70s. Really? No then, I bet you could tell us a few tales about that fella. He practically owned all of Tottenham Court Road. Very scary story. Yeah, Hohenzollern. Very important bloodline, indeed. Very powerful. John Muir was an ancestor of mine through maternal side. He must have known all this. Yeah, they do at that level, don't they? But they're not talking. See no, speak no, hear no. And that's what they've done to the baby boomers. They've got them under that mantra. He lobbied Roosevelt and set up the elite Sierra Club. Yeah. Billy says, hi Sean and all you lovely people. Hello Billy, how are you doing matey? Treen said again, I probably could, but I wouldn't know how to begin. I do believe that you can record it and Google will write it and then you can edit the files as you like. Yeah. A couple of years ago, the Wines were trying to tear down Johnny Muir and the Sierra Club, true to disown him. Yet he was the least racist among them. Well, probably why they were getting rid. All Father were out there. That's the one. That's the one. George Clooney. Yeah, good song by the way. Yeah, but I don't like that George Clooney. Teddy Roosevelt went on trial with John Muir and they were mates for a while until they fell out over the dam because Roosevelt's interest was in lining his pockets. Yeah, Man of Constant Sorry, that's right, yeah. Yeah. It was actually a good movie, that. I enjoyed it. All the main ones not checked every extra, but main 3 are biological favours. Fascinating, huh? Is that the actors in the movie are transgendered? Catchy song. Who? What? George Clooney? You saying he's transgender? Oh yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if they got clones of all these people and the females hiding somewhere. Because I did look into years ago, looking into why is paedophilia rife. And then you get into why they actually used to sodomise the boys before at age 3. So you get into that, then you get into Spartans. And from that, it was basically saying that the reason why they didn't go out to let stop it is because it would either that or cloning would have got bigger. But obviously now cloning's got bigger, so it would, maybe if they'd have stopped that, you'd have had more balanced people in the bloody place. I don't know. Anyway, it didn't give me an excuse, but I could understand that at least they had a reason why the elites are we talking about. We're not just talking about Catholic, we're talking about the elites themselves didn't move too much against it because it would have meant that they'd have just put more effort into cloning. I think probably because it means you're going to get murdered. So if they're going to clone you, obviously at some point they're going to take you out. Where are we? Amazing anyone who believes the enemy's over there needs to do their own work, Sean. Yeah, I mean America is the ultimate place of freedom. That goes, we're screwed. You know, I'm with America every step of the way. Not because I understand that their military has been hijacked, just like this military were, and formed that attitude in my grandparents, you know, where they believed in it 100%. Not so much my grandmother, she didn't really believe it, but my grandfather, one of my grandfathers did. So, Anthony's late. Hello, Anthony, alright, mate? No problem. Capitus Dimutio Maxima. Yes. Decapitation. Peace and grace, Brother Sean Farmer says, disciple of the Messiah. Hey up, friends. So you guys know each other, excellent, that's good. Alright, so we've cracked on with that. Now, so what word do you want to start with? And what we'll do, because a lot of people probably don't realise that this is the method. When you're looking at this stuff, this is kind of an idea of how you start to come to terms with what things actually mean and not what you think they mean. So pick a word. It is one big coup d'etat, you're right. Come on. If you don't pick a word, I'll pick one. It's one big coup. Yeah, okay. Nobody's choosing words? You're all chewing pencil, aren't you? You're not listening in class, are you? At all? I don't know. See, I don't know. This must have a hell of a long delay on this. But nobody seems to be giving me a word. Have you died? You all died? Sudden death syndrome. Well, I'm going to ignore you in a minute. Well, I can see this question and answer idea that we had the other week's not going to go down right well, is it? It's not really going to work, is it? Knickers. Well, I might know you put knickers on Deborah. I don't know. And Anthony's absolutely outraged and he's got some eyeballs on hands. What the hell's that supposed to mean? Well, I don't know what that means. Right, you're all rubbish. I'm going to do it myself. You're absolutely rubbish at this game. So, I might have to think twice about any question and answers kind of thing. Sovereignism. Sovereignty. Okay. Sounds good for me. Now, I can honestly say, I've never heard this. Hang on. I have to write that down because if I flip over, I'm not going to see it. Okay. Let's have a goof on here. So if we plot on here, I'll put that there, I'll crack on here. Suvereinism. Are you making up your own language? No results were found. Have you got the spelling correct? Well, that's not worked, has it? You're making words up, aren't you? Right, so you're all rubbish. Trans-sovereignism. You're making words up now, LFX. You can't be doing that. Right, well, never mind you lot. You're rubbish. Probably dossing. So we'll go here. What does complain mean? It says late 14th century. Complainen. Complainen. Lament. Bewail. Grieve. Also find fault. Express dissatisfaction. Criticise. Also make a formal accusation or charge to an authority. From stem of Old French, complaindre, to lament. From Vulgar Latin, complangere, originally to beat the breast. From Latin, com. Here perhaps an intensive prefix, see, com. Plangere, to strike, beat the breast. From par root, plaque. So basically, if you're pissed off, you'll complain. But most people don't complain, do they? You know what I mean? It says the sense evolution is from expression of suffering. 2. Grievance, blame. The transitive sense of lament died out in the 17th century. Also from late 14th century as utter expression of grief or pain. Hence, chiefly, poetically, emit a mournful sound. 1690s related complained, complaining. So basically, everybody knows that shit's not right, don't they? There's things going on that we're not happy with. People are starting to realise that we've all been trapped by some kind of fraud. to identify something that we really shouldn't be identifying as in the manner that we do. So one would expect everybody to be beating their breasts, but people don't, do they? Because they don't know what to do. So complain. Everybody, I would assume, that's on here is at the point where they would like to complain, wouldn't they? So let's further this slightly. Complaining. Complaining, lament, bewail. So it's same again. Dissatisfy. Also make a formal accusation of charge. So it's pretty similar. So it's exactly the same. So this is what we should be feeling, but we don't know what to do. So let's put in claim. It says 1300 to call out, to ask or demand by virtue of right or authority. From assented stem of Old French clamour, to call, name, describe, claim, complain, declare. From Latin, clamor, to cry out, shout, proclaim. From Pyru, kele, to shout, claimed, claiming. So you have to shout. So if you want to complain, then you have to shout. So then you have to work out, well, how are you going to shout? What are you going to do? Are you just going to go screaming and bawling your head off? Because that's not going to work, is it? You have to work out what it is you have to claim, don't you? We can't do anything until we know things are not right. We know we should be doing something about it, but we're not actually. Most people are not actually doing much about it. They're not actually doing anything to complain. You know what I mean? So, it has to be. That's how it is. So if we're making a claim, or somebody's making a claim against you, they're describing something, they're complaining, they have a problem they want, and they're throwing it at you and saying, you're to blame. You are culpable. You are liable. And everybody goes, okay. Don't we? We do. We go, it's okay. And if we try a bit, because we don't necessarily go through a situation like read what it is and go through every word so we can see what they might be saying. What are they really saying? Because in essence, when you start to look like at this stuff, they are, but we don't look correctly because we don't look at the actual meaning of a lot of these words. So have you thought of another word yet, you lot? Because you're supposed to be joining in. Counterclaim. So hang on. Rapture. You're not into that tree, not you? Into all that rhubarb? Okay, we've got something over here. All right. Oh, you started to play out now, have you? Oh, that's an interesting word. So look at this. I want to write that down. Epioussion. Okay, that's from Anthony. Let's have a look at what this says. Epioussion. Are you making words up again as well? Why are you making words up, you lot? Okay, let's just in case, let's go here. Have a look at a bit of Webster's. What's he saying? Epicene. No, he's not heard of it neither. So either you guys are making it up and you're being very naughty, or you're coming out with, maybe, is it a different language? What kind of language is it that you're playing with here? So, yours is shit. Anthony? That was well shit. What else have we got here? 7. Hair. Healthcare. Hospital. Oh, that might be interesting. So what's a hospital mean? A hospital is a shelter for the needy, from Old French hospital, hostel, shelter, lodging, modern French, hospital. From the late Latin, hospital. So you get your knights hospitaler. Shelter for the needy. Guest house, inn, noun, use of neuter of Latin, adjective, hospitalis, of a guest or host. As a noun, a guest, the duties of hospitality. From hospice, genitive, hospitis, guest, host, see host. Right? So let's have a look at host. Let's see where this takes us. A host. Person who receives guests, especially for pay. Late 13th century from Old French, hoste, guest, host, hostess, landlord. Modern French, hote, so it's get hotel. From Latin, hospitum, nominative, hospice. Yeah? Guest, stranger, sojourner, visitor, hence also foreigner. Also, host, one bound by ties of hospitality. So, are you getting the hospitality you're expecting when you go into a hospital? No. And are you paying for that anyway as a prepaid system? Yeah. Who's using it? Everybody. Not from these lands. So, not sure they quite understand the term host anymore, or they've shifted it from we're no longer welcome. It's only for other Johnny-come-latelys. This appears to be pi goes part compound meaning guest master. Compare Old Church Slavonic, old guest and master. Slavonic gospody, lord master, literally lord of strangers. Ooh! From the root ghosty, stranger, guest, host, and pote, powerful lord. The etymological notion is of someone with whom one has reciprocal duties of hospitality. And that's Watkins. The biological sense of animal or plant having a parasite is from 1857. A multitude, especially an army organised for war, from Old English host, army, from medieval Latin hostis, in early use a stranger, foreigner, in classical use an enemy, from pi root ghosty, stranger, guest, host. It replaced Old English here, see Harry, and in turn has been largely superseded by army. Well, haven't they been transforming them into, what, militaries? So, looks like they're using this at the present, and they haven't told you. The generalised meaning of large number is first attested in 1610s. The Latin H was lost in Old French, then restored in Old French and Middle English spelling, and in modern English also in pronunciation. Lord of hosts translate Hebrew Jehovah T's Boath. Genesis 2. Which appears more than 260 times throughout the Bible and seems to refer to both heavenly, angelic and earthly hosts. Jehovah's T's Boath. Now, isn't it interesting when you see that crossing T's? It's like, yeah, like that. One that way, yeah. And then all these military orders. And then you'll have the octagon on the outside of that, which is what you see on the police badges, you know, that thing that surrounds it on all you. Interesting, me thinking. Jehovah T's Boath. And seems to refer to both heavenly, angelic and earthly hosts. Body of Christ consecrated bread, from the Latin hostia, sacrifice, is also the animal sacrificed. Victim. Ooh! Sacrifice, stranger, enemy. Ooh! I don't think we like that. So just going into hospital, you'd never have thought it'd come up with sacrifice, enemy, animal sacrificed, army, would you? You'd never have thought that. Organised for war, yeah. Lord of strangers, master. never have thought from hospital you'd get that, would you? Let's have a look at potty, powerful lord. Proto-Indo-European root meaning powerful lord. It forms all or part of basho, compos mentis, despot, hospodar, host, indempotent, important, omnipotent, pasha, plenipotentiary, posse, possess, possible, potence, potency, potent, potentate, potential, potentiate, potentiometer, power, totipotent. It is the hypothetical source of evidence for existing is provided by Sanskrit, pati, master, husband, Greek, posis, master, capable, possible. So we got master, didn't we, just on the host. Well, who'd have thought you could have got all that from seeking the word hospital? But can you see now, so just by looking at that, there are so many meanings that can be taken from this. And the knights, remember, knights hospitaller, this is where the hospitals come from. And they were crusading hoity-toys. Any more words? So, conscience. Conscience. Well, we'll put in conscience, shall we? Well, we'll try it. See what it says. Con. To guide a ship. Give orders for the steering of a ship. 1620s from French conduire. To conduct. Lead, guide. From Latin conducere. To lead or bring together. Contribute, serve. From com, with, together. See com. Douceur, to lead. Pyroot, diuc, to lead. As a noun, action or post of steering a ship. Related, conning tower. Dome-shaped pilot house of an ironclad warship or submarine is attested from 1865. Word forming element meaning together with, sometime merely intensive. It is a form of com used in Latin before consonants. In native English formations such as costar, co tends to be used where Latin would use con. Con, negation in the negative. The arguments, arguers or voters against a proposal, mainly in pro and con. 1570, short for like contra, against. See contra. To study, to get to know, peruse carefully. Kunnen, make an attempt, try or seek to do, from Old English. Cunnion. And science. So, against science. Conscience. Against science? Well, would it not be? If you were doing the kingdom within, if it's not this garbage shit that they're coming out with now and calling it science, is it? You know, the transgenders and all that. Science, a noun. Mid-14th century, state or fact of knowing. What is known, knowledge of something acquired by study, information, also assurance of knowledge. Certitude, certainty, the old French science, knowledge, learning, application, corpus of human knowledge. From Latin, so a body of human knowledge. From Latin, scientia, knowledge, a knowing, expertness. From science, genitive, scientis, intelligent, skill, present, participle of seer, to know. So conscience. That's an interesting. Let's stick it together. Faculty of knowing what is right. Originally, especially to Christian ethics. Later, awareness that the acts for which one feels responsible do or do not conform to one's ideal of right. Later 40s, more generally, sense of fairness, of justice, moral sense. Yeah. So when they say, "Oh, to your conscience," they're saying, "Do you believe what I'm saying? God, how can you not make me upset? You're making me upset." You know, that's where they're pulling that. Where in truth, you should be saying, "Shut up, you dick. You're off your head. You're not a cat. Yeah? That's what you should be saying. End of. You know? End of. So anyway, I'm not going to get excited. So from the old French, conscience got innermost thoughts, desires, intentions and feelings. Innermost. See, that's the conscience we're supposed to be watching. Not, where's your conscience because you're not believing a word I've said? You were alright for a bit, but then you went off over here. And I don't agree. So, search your conscience. So, well, I did. You're full of shit and I'm fantastic. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing, isn't it? So yeah, conscious together, inside, a knowing of a thing together with another person. Consciousness, knowledge, particularly knowledge with oneself. Sense of right and wrong and moral sense. Abstract noun from conscientium. Nominative, consciens. Present participle of consciere. Be mutually aware, be conscious of, wrong in Latin, to know well. From assimilated form of com, with or thoroughly, con. We've looked at that. See, to know, probably originally to separate one thing from another, to distinguish, related to scindere, to cut, divide, from pi root, ski. Okay. Is there anything else that might interest us there? No, I think that pretty much covers that. Conscionable, having a conscience, 1518s of actions. Consonant with right or duty of persons governed by conscience. See? Persons. So your conscience then has to be in sync with whatever contracts your persona is in. Conscious, knowing, privy to. From Latin, conscious, knowing, aware, from consecure. Consecure, be mutually aware. Mutually aware, so copy. We're all conscious of the copy. Therefore, it must be right. You need to seek your conscience, boy, because you're not doing what we say. Okay, well, no problem. Off we go. So there we go. I don't know how we got that. Oh, we got there from conscience. Right. What else? Panties. Deborah! Them southerners, they always bring it down. Don't they? To tittle-tattle and naughtiness. And if it's... See, look, I'm stuck in the middle. If it's not Debbie in south, it's Treen in north. Agis, she's up there in Aggisland. It's Treen. He's got his stereo. And then I've got Yorkshireman. Wait a minute, where am I now? Yorkshireman to my east. And Scousers to my left. Oh, you see what I'm saying? I feel like I'm recorded. Anyway. Panties, says Debbie. Deborah, that is a very, very naughty. Very naughty. I'm tempted. I am tempted, but I'm not going to do it because it's naughty. Treen says Edom. Oh, we can have a bash at that. Which will probably be wrong, but it might not be. Idumean, in reference to biblical Edom. From Latin, Idumea, Edom. From Greek, Idumea. From Hebrew, Edom. So we need to have a look at this. Because they say Rome, their traditionally states Rome to be Edom, when it's not. It's actually the Judeans, who were probably the Hyksos, in my opinion. The pharaohs, the shepherd kings. Anyway, let's have a see. In reference to biblical Edom from Latin, so we're just getting the same. We're not getting any more. And I'm not surprised we're not getting any more. Any related? Idolater. Now then. Because this is in the Noahides. Idolater. 14th century. Idolater. Idol worshipper. From Old French, idolatre. Contracted from late Latin, idolatres. From ecclesiastical Greek, idolatris, idol worshipper, related to idolatria, see idolatry. Idolatry, worship of idols and images. From the Old French, idolatry. From Vulgar Latin, idolatria, contraction. Of late Latin, idolatria. Tertullian, from ecclesiastical Greek, idolatria, worship of idols. From eidolon, image, see idol, see latry. Ooh, let's have a look at what this latry might mean. Word forming element mean worship of. Ah. Native formation, okay. Larceny, theft, wrongful, fraudulent, taking of that. So, worship of is latry, and idol, image of a deity as an object of, and they put in brackets, pagan worship. From Old French, idol, idol, graven image, pagan god. From Latin, idolum. Setting on fire then, I forgot to turn heating off before I cracked off. So, idol, graven image, pagan god, from Latin idolum, image, mental or physical. I mean, I don't know how they're going to manage to get anybody within that that's of a religion, because everybody's got images in your mind, physical images. I mean, it's just ridiculous. How anybody's going to escape that seventh no-hide law. Especially apparition, ghost, but used in church Latin for false god. Image of a pagan deity as an object of worship. This is from Greek eidolon, mental image, apparition, phantom. Oid, word forming element meaning like that of a thing, like that, from Latinized form of Greek oides, 3 syllables, from eidos, form. Form. Related to ideen, to see, to know. So that's oid, off. What we're looking at, off for. As an emphatic form of Old English, see of, employed in the adverbial use of that word. The prepositional meaning, away from. Church of England. Church away from England. Ministry of Defence. Ministry away from defence. We've got DE for fence. No offence. This is how they're forming their words. Yeah, but of. Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. I might have got excited there. Yeah, away from. I know I'd seen it before. Of. Away from Proto-Germanic, af. Source also of Old Norse, af, Old Frisian, af, of. Dutch, af, off, down. German, ab, off, from, down. From Pi root, apo, off, away. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? The Church of England. You know, all these we take for granted with the word of in it. So that's where they're showing you they've took it over. And they're using it as a front. So we need to just consider that, the use of the word of, when we're looking at things we take for granted and sacrosanct as meaning what we think it means. So, what are we looking at there? Rebuttal. Rebuttal? We'll go with rebuttal. Rebuttal. An act of rebutting. So it follows on from complain, doesn't it? And claim. Refutation, contradiction. 1793 from rebut. Plus al. Earlier were rebutment, 1590s, and rebutter. To thrust back. Thrust back from reback. See, or abortus. Strike, push from Germanic source. So rebuttal. You've got to do something. Or, when you don't, it's tacit agreement, innit? We've looked at all that stuff, haven't we? Tacit agreement. Silence. Oh, shit. Is tacit agreement. We have to complain, make a claim in rebuttal of. So then we have to find out what it is we're rebutting. And I think that's the game we're all on, isn't it? If we're seeking out this kind of stuff. Anyway, I just thought we'd bash through that because I know that not everybody knows how to sort of get stuck into something. But that is and then you've got Blacks, you've got Websters. Have them up. Check out the word in them because Blacks is the black magic, the book of black magic that they use. That's their determinations. Anyway, you know. So I just thought we'd... Because it did take a lot longer to do that banking thing, to be honest. I wouldn't expect it to take that long, but never mind. Deaf intuition, that's why you have a hearing before a trial. To test your hearing and understanding of what's going to happen. And it's a confession, isn't it? The moment you get arrested, they want you to speak, talk, gob off, confession. So they want a confession, then you're going into court, and you're pleading for mercy. And they're not going to give you mercy, are they? They're going to shaft you. You know, some cash. You know, so it's an inverse of Reformation where they were all complaining about you could buy your way out of sin. Now they're going to slap you in there, and the only way out of it is you're going to pay them some cash, or you're going to go onto some course, or you're going to go into some prison that they're again going to charge the taxpayer the pot for putting you in there. Anyway, you know the crack, you guys. So we'll send them away on that. So I'm trying to catch you up. I keep whizzing about. Don't appear anywhere else. Battery energy. That word, Sean, is a transliteration of Greek, and it's in the Lord's Prayer. Is it now? Okay. So I wonder why it's not coming up in ours. See, everything's controlled like that. Chat GPT, is it? So a guy came around here last week to show me it. So I said, right, we'll ask it. So we're asking a question. And straight away I said, there you go. It's been programmed. It's not its own monster because it's been programmed. And as we furthered that, you could see that it had actually been programmed not to answer the question, to take you around the houses. So he would say, like, pretend. I know you don't know, but pretend. Then you get a different response again. You can see why they're setting this up. I'm telling you now, it's just going to destroy everything that's left in our systems. You don't need an artist. It'll draw. You don't need an essay. Write an essay. He'll do it. He'll write your song. He'll write your poem. He'll write whatever you want. So it's a game changer. Let's put it that way. It'll be interesting to see how it actually pans out in real time. But take it from me, this thing's programmed to not answer questions or to give you an answer that's not answering the question, but to make you think you've had it answered. So somebody's behind it programming. AI only, it's up its own ass. Somebody else is giving it its parameters. Yeah, okay, so they cry about, well, it might take over and get them. Well, I'm pretty sure they've already set that up where it can't. But who knows? And it doesn't appear anywhere else, says Andrew. Well, that's interesting, Anthony. Elle says, Sean, old dear, old bean, the bean, big, love to yourself and all the living man and live. Well, good evening to you, sir. LFX Maritime got to include the contract. Treed, I'm called Treen, old bean. Images of underwater. I missed something there with you, Deborah. I'm not, anyway. Scrabble, defense, no offense. DE. It's a negative. No offense. Department is no apartment of what? I mean, we've done that really a time ago when we looked through that stuff. But Tree says, true, my granddad gave me that nickname and it stuck. What, Treen? Mew says, okay, folks, it's my bedtime. I think it's everybody's bedtime. Untitled says, put common in. Well, we'll put common in as a last resort and see what crack is. See, they're not even playing. But never mind. belonging to all, owned or used jointly, general, of a public nature or character, from Old French, common, common, general, free, open, public. There you go, folks. Yeah, that's why they use the term common. Common custom, common law. Yeah. In common, public, shared by all or many, general, not specific, familiar, not pretentious. It's a form of reconstructed by compound, commune, held in common. Compound adjective formed from core, together. So there we go. Common is, you could describe nations, you could describe common idea, common hive mind, but here in the West it means something beneficial, or it should do anyway. So anyway, it's enough of that malarkey. So I think I have to apologise. The initial thing took way more long than I thought. So right, well, I think I'm about done. I don't think you guys have got any other questions. Kenwood Case says United States of America. Yeah, off America. Exactly. It's there. When you start to look at the words in that way, you can start to see what they're really saying. What they're really saying to you. You know, it's like I say, it's not just... You've got to understand them, your enemy, as much as you understand yourself. And I say enemy. They are the opposition because they're doing a fraud. But you can either go to war with them, which is pretty dangerous. Spartacus had a good chance, but he didn't do it. So you can go to physical war with him, which is difficult. And so far, he's never succeeded. That's not to say it couldn't, but it never has. Or as the guy who claimed to be an insider said, there was once a time when we nearly did take it off him. And then they did, but they suffered for it. You know, don't try it, guys, don't try it. Anyway, spelling broadcast, says Gary. Yes, absolutely. Sean Reed Messages sent you some bits. I shall answer. Thanks for that, matey. Yeah, I'm interested to look at that. And Debbie says, night all. Everything says, Viperina SQ Carodat Viscara Textus. I can't remember what that means, but I do have that translated. Well done, Sean Lane, for all. Who would win in a fight between a fully grown male lion and a silverback gorilla? Ooh. You see, the trouble with the cats is not only do they have big gobs and big fangs, they also have big claws. Strength of a gorilla would probably be able to throw these things around a bit, but if it fanged out of its arm, he's no claws, has it? I mean, they do have teeth, like, but I wouldn't like to say, to be honest. Well, I think what it is that they are the enemy. I think the problem, they're stuck. They're more stuck than we are, aren't they? I don't know. You just keep going, don't you? But it's important that you start to get savvy with words, and that's a perfect example. You can go through the dictionaries in that way, etymology, but then you've got Webster's and you've got Black's. Have them up there, and if you're not getting anywhere, always worth sticking it in them, because they'll wrap a law around it somewhere. It'll be in a law, and they'll give it you. And then in Black's, like I said, it's the Black Magic book. You know where they're trying to bring it from. That's what they're trained through the Bar Association, which again is a Rothschild creation. All commerce, all merchant classes, all it's ever been, them v everybody else. And everybody else gets on the land because they're always naval, tries a little ass off to create a culture and a nation that doesn't get usurped by these fruit bats. And usually what you find, if you look in history, that the way these things get in is by offering you sin. Offering you things you probably shouldn't do. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Then it's addictive things. So there's a consistent supply in the oil. Then they're creating dry docks called banks. And away you go. That's the way it is, and that's the way they've run it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I can only say. Till the next time.
electronic